Even before it started, it was a colourful spectacle. 160 Arcadia High School students prepared to take to the streets. But music was to be only part of the performance. Costumes had taken up to 8 weeks to make.
We start off with the plain gold feather, and we measure 4 inches here and 2 inches here. We cut the white feathers to match. First we put on the red ones, and then we put on the white ones, and then we put these white ones on. These are called white fluffs, and these are called the tips. And we put those on. And we do them on both sides, so it takes like 20 minutes to do each feather.
But they say the work was worth it. For many, the visit is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
None of us have ever been to Australia, nor outside of an opportunity as wonderful as this would we probably ever get a chance to come to Australia.
With routines rehearsed, instruments tuned, and smiles at the ready, they were off. Newcastle's own award-winning band, the Marching Koalas, led the way. On reaching Civic Park, the large crowd was treated to a musical feast, American style.
As a replacement for the likes of Mark Sargent and Jason Hoogerworth, David Woods would appear to have plenty of weight on his shoulders. But according to trainer Jeff Noble, that won't be a problem.
Dave rates very highly. His enthusiasm is very good and very, very strong.
The huge front rower's dedication to training wasn't enough to save his spot with the Raiders this year, but he now has a chance to push for a permanent first-grade berth with the Knights. The pressure is definitely on, but Woods says he's not the sort to buckle under the strain.
I've been around long enough to know what the game's about, and I've got opportunities this week and I just got to go out and do my best. I've got to prove to the blokes in the side that I'm worth playing with, and I'll just go up and do my best and show them that they'll like playing with me.
He's the only change to the side, which last weekend snatched a 12-all draw with Balmain.
For many years, the Chinese national team has been the top dog in Asia, and they also boast an impressive international record. That took a little tarnishing last night at the hands of the local lads, newcomers virtually to the big time. Playing the second match of a 4-test series and behind 1-0 after Wednesday night's loss in Sydney, the Aussies started slowly dropping the first set, but then they found their rhythm to dominate the second set 15-9. Australia continued to apply the pressure and led 2-1 after taking the third 15-13. But the powerful Chinese bounced back to level at 2-all. With the knowledge that a win over China would do wonders for volleyball in Australia, the home team produced brilliant form to win the final set 15-10 and level the series. Tonight, the two teams clash in Canberra.
Officers from the Council and State Pollution Control Commission made checks on the disposal site today. Residents from Whittingham, just south of Singleton, have been protesting to Council for months, saying the depot was a dumping ground for dangerous chemicals. Those fears were ignored.
All the councillors come round, don't they, at election time and tell you, come round shaking your hand from door to door and saying, we'll do this for you and we'll do that, and when we've got problems, none of them want to buy in.
Now, independent tests by council and the residents on water samples from the waste dams show significant amounts of lead, cadmium, iron, copper and zinc. Some figures more than 3 times the safe level.
We're afraid that if this goes down the hill, goes through the Doughboy, into the Doughboy, it'll eventually work its way into the Hunter River and get into water streams.
Residents met with an officer from the State Pollution Control Commission, but he said till he could speak with his superiors, his hands were tied.
You keep asking questions, and I'll tell you, I'm not...
Shouldn't you be recommending that it be closed down today?
Look, can you just leave me for a while, and I quite clearly can't make any comment on camera.
According to council, the sanitary site is designed for dumping sewage and food grease traps. For nearly 30 years, the depot worked without problem, with waste dumped every second day. Locals say their problems began about 2 years ago. Truck numbers increased, waste coming in from as far away as Newcastle and Scone, 3 and 4 loads a day. After an NBN News report 3 weeks ago, those truck loads have decreased to just 3 and 4 loads a week. Brian Carter from Singleton Council had said the site was safe, commenting he'd be happy to live there, but figures released today may change his mind. Do you think council has handled this issue responsibly?
Council's got a duty to look after all its ratepayers. We will continue to do exactly that, and we will act with the best information we have at the time.
Local residents have called for heads, saying they've been misled by council. The issue has aroused national interest. Environmental group Greenpeace will inspect the sanitary depot next Wednesday. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Independent Alderman John Tate revived the issue late last year and has now convinced the local government department that the matter needs urgent consideration because of elections coming up in September.
People continually contact me and say what's happening with the ward system procedure, because people want it back. They want to have a closer relationship with their council.
Now, the city of Newcastle is the city. We should be able to vote for somebody from Beresfield or Minmi or Bar Beach and get the best team possible. And that's what we can do with a citywide franchise.
Despite his objections, the Lord Mayor admits a majority of aldermen seem to support wards and he sees their reintroduction as inevitable. But Alderman McNaughton says the timing is not right.
But I still believe that it can't be done in that time, and it certainly can't be done without very, very severe strains on the council. And I don't believe we should be doing that. We've got far more important things in earthquake reconstruction. You know, we're running at 3 times the normal number of building applications and development applications. We've got enormous pressures in the council. We want all hands to the wheel on looking after that without looking after the electoral advantage of a few aldermen.
The problem is that Newcastle Council has been left in limbo. When reformed by the Labor state government of 1986, the intention was to fine-tune a new system. The coalition government, which took over Macquarie Street, has done nothing, leaving Newcastle the only council in the state without wards.
A firewood business has operated out of this garden for several years, but according to neighbours, it has grown to become a commercial concern in a residential zoning.
We can't sleep for the machine that runs 24 hours a day, the chainsaws that run. And how can you drive trucks up there? And we're going to fight it right through to the Land and Environment Court further if we can.
The residents say it has devalued their homes by as much as $40,000. The full council inspection of the site was called after 2 aldermen recommended the yard get the thumbs up. But council's planning department disagreed, recommending that permission to continue operations be refused. Since 3/4 of the wood is supplied to the council for use by pensioners, it leaves Mayor Ivan Welsh in a tricky position.
I think that Council is a little embarrassed by the fact that we're one of the main recipients, but I still think we've got to take into consideration the comfort of the people who live around this particular site.
He believes modifications can be made to the site to cut down on noise. Meanwhile, the residents are spitting chips and remain at obvious loggerheads with the yard proprietor.
Peter Sterling may be off the footy field for a season, but he's still playing hard on the lecture circuit. Speaking in Cardiff today, Sterlo criticised the interchange, saying it was killing attack in the game and wasn't much good for players' health either.
You're having fresh players out there for a full 80-minute duration, hitting harder probably for 80 minutes than they were for 15 or 20 minutes, so maybe that has some bearing as well.
While Sterlo's shoulder is a recurring problem and not related to the new rule, he says the system must be queried because of a spate of injuries. The Newcastle Knights have lost Marquette, Sargent, Hoogerworth and Gary Worth in a furious opening to the Winfield Cup.
Injuries this year are going to happen, and probably going to happen a little bit more than what they've happened before because of the interchange rule and because of the off-season technical preparation, which seems to be more advanced than what it's been before. So the athlete's bigger and stronger, and therefore the impact's greater.
Knights doctor Bill Hollingsworth isn't so sure of the problem. He says injuries are consistent with other seasons and the interchange has in fact helped players.
If they get a bad knock even, they're off the ground straight away, so they can be assessed straight away and they don't feel as though they have to stay on the football field anymore.
Sterlo's injured shoulder will keep him off the field till 92. By that time, the former Raymond Terrace footballer predicts the interchange rule will be dead and buried.
I heard Warren Ryan quoted as saying that he thought that the interchange was adding bricks to the wall, and I think in many ways defensively that is, and I don't know if that's a good thing for our game.
It hasn't been easy running a property in the last 2 years. Floods in 1990 and a drought in 91 has farmers stretched to the limit. Now a call from the United Nations to cut dangerous CFC gases means more pressure.
100% of the dairy farm bulk vats are using the refrigerant R12, which is the gas that has the highest ozone depleting potential of any of the refrigerant gases.
Farmers will have to replace their milk vats with a new system at a cost of between $25,000 and $40,000, changing a program which began 24 years ago.
Back in 1967, Dungog had 280 dairy farmers. With the introduction of the bulk VAT system to replace cans, more than 50% of producers dropped out. The introduction of this new system could also have devastating effects.
I'd say it'd be very tough for probably 25% of local dairy farmers.
Farmers have a maximum of 4 years before the R12 gas is banned. A mixture of gases can be used for a further 3 years. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
This This convincing forgery was handed across the counter of a large Charlestown Square store on Tuesday. While it lacks the pastel colours of the real thing, a busy shop assistant could easily overlook the differences.
And it's all over in a couple of minutes when you make a transaction. People don't take the time to look at and study the forged $100 bill, and in fact it is a very good forgery.
The man who presented this fake is believed to be around 55 years old, approximately 165 centimetres tall with grey wavy hair. He was well spoken and clean shaven, a description that would fit many who pass through Charlestown Square every day.
At the time a small purchase was made, the shop assistant then exchanged the bill for cash money, and so it was quite easily done at a busy time of the day.
Inspector McSporran spent much of today speaking to other shopkeepers in the centre, giving them a description of the man, showing them the fake, warning them to be on the lookout. However, chances are the counterfeiter will not strike at the same shopping centre twice, and all shopkeepers in the city should be wary.
I think anybody purchasing a small item of not much value and presenting $100 note in order obviously to get a large amount of change in exchange for the item. That's what they should be looking for. Be very suspicious about that.
Lined up beside the Treasury issue bill, the differences are obvious, but in isolation the deception is effective. Just last month, an ice cream parlour in the city fell victim to a similar forgery. A woman exchanged a worthless photocopy for a Coke and $99 worth of change. Police have not ruled out the possibility the two may be linked. Alison Peters for NBN News.
In the 4 premiership matches so far in the Winfield Cup, the Newcastle Knights on most occasions have been behind in the penalty count, on more than the odd occasion by a big margin. Against Souths last week it was 14-6 in favour of the Rabbitohs. The meeting tonight, which lasted for nearly 2 hours, was called to try and rectify the problem, and ironically the man who was in charge of Sunday's game, Jeff Weeks, was the referee on the spot tonight. But he believes the meeting was beneficial.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a greater understanding of our role out there, of what the referee how he has to react to certain situations. They've probably got a better idea of rules that they weren't sure about. We explained those rules tonight.
Coach Alan McMahon likewise was happy with the outcome, which will be put to the test against the Roosters on Sunday at the ISC.
We'd like to resolve a certain amount of issues, and they had the opportunity to stress their case as we had the opportunity to stress our case.
Beneath the surface here at the Burwood Beach Treatment Works, and over there under Merriweather, lies an estimated 14 million cubic metres of space. It was once the Newcastle Coal Company colliery, abandoned more than 70 years ago. But if the Hunter Water Board has its way, it will become the region's newest waste dump. This is sludge, a 99% water, 1% solid mixture, which the board hopes to pump into the mine.
Sludge is a byproduct of the biological treatment process that goes on. We accelerate a natural biodegradation process by encouraging the growth of these microorganisms which chew up all the organics that are in the sewage. But because they're growing and multiplying as they eat the food in the sewage, we have an excess of them.
Sludge isn't produced at present, waste is instead screened, solids like this buried, and fluids pumped through an ocean outfall. After last night's packed meeting, several residents saw the mine dumping proposal as the lesser of two evils.
If we don't get secondary treatment, we're still going to get pollution out to sea, which we're getting at the moment with only primary treatment.
When one studies these reports, it has the least environmental impact on the district of any of the proposals.
There's no alternative really, is it, at the moment?
They should go ahead with it. I think there are modifications they could make to it. And so long as they take the normal precautions of good monitoring, there'll be no problem.
But other residents were sceptical about the board's ability to monitor the project with a mere $50,000 a year.
It's another one of those cheap, simple solutions that statutory bodies go for. And then later on we find that it's really very expensive because of the problems that are created.
Well, I think it's a joke.
But monitoring is a serious business for Water Board Managing Director Paul Broad.
Now, if we take this next step and put sludge down the mine, the control mechanisms are the key.
But if some residents have their way, the project won't get that far. They say the board has no legal right to dump sludge under their land.
By what legal statute does the board claim the right to pump sewage under our private residential properties?
Other residents pressed for alternatives. Dry sludge is one option. It has some organic value and can be used as compost or filler. But at present, the board says it's too expensive to produce, while money needs to be spent on pressing problems at its inland plants.
They pose big problems for us. They're plants on which we're consistently having problems. We're not meeting SPCC standards a lot of the time, and they're a worry to us. We need to do major work on them.
Mine dumping of sludge won't begin for at least a year. Even then, it's subject to State Pollution Control Commission approval and a 2-year trial period. Chris Barth, Newsnight.
The camp on top of the mountains near Jakarta today was a sea of mud, icy cold. Many of the refugees, especially children, have no shoes. There is no escape from the mud and cold and rain. They walk in it, wash in it, sleep in it. There is still little help. There is food for perhaps 5,000 people, not the 100,000 crowded here. But some refugees aren't waiting for international aid. A few hundred have given up hope and gone back to Iraq, saying they would rather risk reprisals from Saddam Hussein's secret police than continue to endure the conditions here.
The United States is taking the leadership role on bringing refugees support, and we're going to continue to do it. And we're doing a magnificent job in conjunction with these allies. And P.S., I am not going to involve any American troops in a civil war in Iraq. They are not going to be going in there to do what some of my severest critics early on now seem to want me to do. And I want these kids to come home, and that's what's going to happen.
Through the efforts of a man who didn't live to see what he'd started and the help of a bicentennial grant, Cardiff now has 2 parks. Carlton Wilkinson began rallying support for a green belt 6 years ago. In doing so, he united the council, conservationists and the community. Carlton died in 1988, but was remembered at the opening of the Wilkinson and Bicentennial Parks, flanking Mile Road near Winding Creek.
I hope that my grandchildren really appreciate it and they look up to it, that belonged to their grandfather.
Children from local schools, scout and guides groups helped plant and water 500 native trees and shrubs during their summer holidays. Many took a shine to the work.
I just learnt that I want to be a landscape artist when I get older.
What was the best thing about working on the project?
Getting dirty hands.
Doesn't do you any harm, you reckon?
No, it's actually good.
Have you got a favourite tree down there too?
Not really, just all of them.
$70,000 has been spent so far on fencing, a gazebo, path and plantings. Locals hope to see the park extended and a Japanese garden included to mark Cardiff's ties with a sister city in Japan.